Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fund Manager Fridays with 5paisa.com. I'm Deepika Asthana, your host for the evening. So, inarguably, geopolitical tensions in Europe and rate hikes in key developing markets across the world have put both global as well as Indian equity markets on an edge. लेकिन जैसा कहते हैं हर क्राइसिस में अपॉर्चुनिटी हो सकती है. So the whole idea today is to find out what is this opportunity in the current market scenario in India. And joining us today to discuss exactly that is Mr. Shane Vass, Senior Product Manager at Axis AMC. Hello, Shane. Very welcome to the webinar.
Hi, Deepika. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure, pleasure. So, I think, Shane, I think this conversation as a starter, of course, we cannot ignore the current environment, right? There is all of
Yeah.
these geopolitical tensions that are happening. And clearly, markets in the last 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, have been on edge. There's a lot of sentiment being thrashed about. So, just maybe can we start with your view on the market and then get into where you are seeing opportunities?
Sure. Great. Good evening to all our viewers and thanks for having me. So, if you were to look at where markets were, say, in early September, from there you've seen a very big change. Big change is on multiple fronts. Deepika, like you mentioned, rising interest rates, geopolitical tensions, all of that, coupled with a lot of pessimism that has been developed by internal market
Mhm.
participants itself on account of valuations and
Right.
all of these things. So
Mhm.
if you look from all the way to September
Mhm.
to date, you've seen two
Mhm.
bouts of corrections. One was
Correct.
on account of pessimism, that was on account of valuations.
Mhm.
There was also a risk of that third wave that came in December. So there was
Correct.
that niggling feeling that, oh, markets have gone up very materially. There has to be some degree of pause. So that happened.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then in January, it was all about the U.S. Fed tapering. FIs had a huge sell number, for example,
Mhm.
in India as across the world, and also then you had the Russia crisis, or a crisis of faith, as I would put it. So
Correct.
so in all of that, basically markets had a tumultuous run,
Correct.
and we've kind of had a stable footing now. So last 1 week or so, we've markets have been relatively stable. Touch wood.
Sure. Mm. Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. 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 Absolutely. I think Shane, what you just mentioned is so. This is the thing about markets, right? Ki short term, mein it's driven by sentiment, and over the long term, it's driven by the true fundamentals of the companies that comprise the market.
Correct.
But keeping that in mind, and this is something that I've heard a lot, ki small cap stocks over the long term can be super investments for wealth creation. But at the same time, small cap stocks also have a higher degree of risk for many reasons. So from that perspective, can we maybe briefly discuss what are the factors which make small cap, like why our investors should actually look at small cap stocks, and of course the risk inherent in investing in such kind of stocks?
Sure. So small caps are very pertinent because small caps are very retail friendly. तो अगर
Okay.
आप देखोगे फर्स्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट जो कोई भी करता है, इट विल बी इन योर ब्लू चिप नेम्स एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट. एंड देन
Mhm.
एज मार्केट्स एंड एज people, investors learn about the stock market, they
Mhm.
invariably tilt themselves towards high growth and high. They get enamored with a lot of these smaller companies.
Right.
And
Uh-huh.
what is the reason for that? The reason is that by nature, small caps are more volatile. Small caps are more growth oriented. So India जैसे देश में, you always say that India is a growing country, and by virtue that when India grows, there is a whole land of entrepreneurs that are looking to make
Correct.
markets, create products, and sell to the world themselves, right?
Mhm.
So
Correct.
if you look at all of those things, the actual story of the Indian capital markets in a growth
Mhm.
phase is small cap driven. And
Okay. Mhm.
as expected,
Mhm.
in a growth phase, small caps typically do better than, say, a large cap or a mid cap. Of course, this
Mhm.
is not always constant. So you
Of
have
course.
periods
Yes.
of time where large caps do well, mid caps do well, and then of course small caps will do well. And
Mhm,
but typically, if you see any growth cycle across the
mhm,
world, so whether you see it in the US, whether you see it in India, growth, whenever there is a growth tilt towards the economy, the perception is that of growth, you would typically
mhm,
see a small cap stock or a small cap index or a small cap basket that would
mhm.
typically drive the markets towards those larger higher peaks.
Sure. Mhm.
Now, it's very important to also understand what a small cap is. Small
Indeed. Yeah.
caps, like I mentioned to you, are high growth companies. They
Mhm,
are promoter driven top down companies, and they are businesses that are very niche in nature. So, like we talk about our startup universe.
right.
What is the problem they are trying to solve? They were trying to solve a particular problem that is not solvable by existing competitors, and
Correct. Mhm,
hence they try to disrupt the status quo. So increasingly today in India, you see that small cap companies are niche companies who are trying to disrupt the status quo of the market, right?
mhm.
And if you identify the scalable business ideas, you tend to develop, they grow over time, and then of course they create lots of wealth. And that is
Mhm.
what the equity thought is, that paisa banega over the long term.
Over the long
So
term.
small
Right.
caps is the true
Mhm,
version of paisa banega in the long term if you
mhm.
identify the right stocks. So that is
Correct.
what small caps are all about.
Excellent. But I think जो आपने last चीज बोली ना, if you identify the right stocks, uh,
Yeah,
that's very important, right? Because I think large caps में selection is not as important as it is in small caps. क्योंकि large caps में already proven track record है, right? So for our retail investors, picking up large cap stocks is not a challenge. But in small cap stocks, the selection is the biggest challenge, and I personally feel also the biggest source of risk, because if you go wrong, you can really go wrong, because, like you said, these are niche companies, promoter driven.
yeah.
So, I mean, I believe that that's where the risk comes from. But I also wanted to understand, ki, is there a way for investors to benefit from this great upside potential, but not get into the risk of stock selection?
Yeah, yeah. So just to add to your point,
Sure.
Deepika, one big difference between, say, a large cap, mid cap, or a small cap is the size of the universe. So large
Mm-hmm.
caps are basically 100 stocks, as
Right.
per Amphi, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Large caps are about 100 stocks. Mid caps are another 150 stocks, and the rest of the stocks are actually all small caps.
Oh,
While we
correct.
don't have a micro cap category itself,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good bet to make that you've got in excess of 300, 350 stocks that are actually small cap in nature. At
Mm-hmm.
according to mutual funds, we all consider everything beyond stock number 251 to be small caps.
Correct.
Mind you, there are almost 6,000 companies that are listed in India, so that's a huge universe,
Huge number.
right?
Right.
So but while not all of them are investable, but
Mhm.
you've got a very, very big universe, right? So
Right. Mhm.
in that universe, it is very important to follow a rules based approach, to build
Okay.
transparent portfolios. Another factor is liquidity, and this I
Mhm.
cannot address enough. And we
Mhm.
were discussing this, even when in the
Right.
pre-show,
Right.
that
Right.
impact cost and liquidity are very, very important when it comes to small caps. When the times are
Sure.
good, देर इज लिक्विडिटी, आप खरीद सकते हो 5, 10, 15 करोड़, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. बट जब आप
Mhm.
बेचने जाओगे, कब बेचने जाओगे?
Mhm.
आइदर व्हेन यू नीड लिक्विडिटी, या फिर देर इज अ
Mhm.
मार्केट करेक्शन. And at
Correct.
that point in time, that is where impact cost hurts you, and that really pinches you. That is the hidden cost
Mhm.
of small cap investing. So,
Mhm.
in this particular segment, it is great to have curated index products that focus on, and today, the index providers have done a lot of work, to be honest,
Sure. Mhm.
around liquidity, around portfolio construction, around indexing. So today, as passive fund managers, there
Mhm.
is a there are options where we can work with, wherein we can provide, say, a small cap passive strategy which is rule based, which is transparent, and of course it is low cost by nature. So,
Mhm.
and give you a product and a portfolio that is great for small cap investing. It gives you all the experiences of a small cap investing, sans, say, the impact cost, the liquidity. We try to minimize that through index
Mhm.
investing.
Okay. So that sounds interesting, Shane, and I think maybe we can discuss this a little bit more in detail. So, जब आप बोल रहे हैं कि passive approach can be adopted while investing in small cap stocks. So, what exactly, like just for the benefit of our viewers, I assume you're talking about index funds. So, maybe can
Correct.
we take a step back and just understand in brief what exactly are index funds?
Sure, sure. So index funds are very easy. Let's so to the concept was actually pioneered by Vanguard Group ke John Bogle.
Don't know.
Basically, what he did was he said that investing, at least in the US in the 70s, 80s, and all of that,
Mhm,
is very very complicated. People charge you a lot of fees. They are very opaque in their
mhm,
thought process, investing philosophy. There's a lot of corruption, all of these negatives around investing at that point in time. So he said,
mhm,
why not let me just buy a basket of securities which is widely tracked. तो उसने क्या
mhm,
किया, उसने S&P 500, which was the most prevalent index at that time and still is today. He
mhm,
said
mhm.
that I will give you a product, a simple small product, which lets you take market exposure to all these 500 companies.
Okay.
In And what I'm going to achieve, I'm going to try and achieve by building this portfolio is to track the returns of a underlying portfolio. So in this case, it was the S&P 500. So
Correct.
that started all the way back in 70s, 80s
Mhm,
in the US and became very, very prominent as passive investing. This whole story that we have today in the mutual fund industry or the asset
mhm,
management
mhm.
industry, it is a whole industry that is so large that it actually competes or is actually larger than the active mutual fund business today worldwide.
All right, right.
So
Mhm,
what is an index fund? So index fund is basically like I explained to you, is a basket of securities in a very neatly packed bite-sized product offering. So let's say, for example, any mutual fund index
mhm.
fund that you look at starts with an NAV of 10 rupees. So
Right.
with that 10 rupees, and it can start as little as 500 rupees. So with that
Mhm,
500 rupees, you can take exposure to, say, if you are doing a Nifty index fund, you can take
mhm.
the exposure to all the 50 stocks in the Nifty.
Okay.
वैसे ही in the small cap space, we've got indexes called like the Nifty Small Cap 250 index or the Nifty
Right.
Small Cap 50 index.
Mhm,
There are
mhm.
there are a large number of indexes that are there in the market, and among them is something called the Nifty Small Cap 50 index, which we have actually chosen for our latest offering. Uh,
Okay. Mhm,
which is a little bit of a more curated product. I will get into that a little later. But in essence, what we are trying to do is trying to track the performance of small cap stocks
mhm, mhm.
and offering investors a very neatly priced, neatly basketed offering through a mutual
Mhm,
fund route. So, जैसा आप equity investing करते हो mutual funds में,
mhm.
same way you are getting all the benefits of mutual funds and getting the power of market linked returns through an index fund. We are not trying to create alpha in an
Mhm,
index fund. It is just
mhm,
market returns. तो आपको स्मॉल
mhm,
कैप अच्छा लगता है, फॉर एग्जांपल आप स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स फंड के थ्रू खेल लीजिए, यू विल गेट दैट मार्केट
mhm,
मार्केट डायरेक्शन, जैसा ऊपर ऊपर
mhm,
जाता है नीचे जाता है व्हाटएवर.
mhm, mhm. Very interesting. So basically, I think Shane, आपने जो बोला, and correct me if I'm wrong, but so you are creating a portfolio with जो भी underlying index है, जैसा वो index है, वैसे ही हम portfolio बनाएंगे. For an investor, the benefit stems from the fact कि uh, I don't have to buy एक एक security in the index. एक
हाँ,
investment के through मुझे सारे securities में exposure मिल जाएगा,
very very
right?
valid point. So sorry, I did not I
Go
did
ahead.
not talk about this. A
नहीं
very
नहीं, go
valid
ahead.
point. तो अगर आप देखोगे, so if you take any index, say Nifty
Mhm,
50, right?
mhm.
एक stock will be maybe 200 rupees, 300 rupees. Some stocks are even as high as 15-20,000 rupees.
Correct.
तो आपको अगर मार्केट एक्सपोजर लेना है, स्मॉलर इन्वेस्टर्स टिपिकली कैनॉट टेक दैट एक्सपोजर
Mhm.
unless so typically to create a nifty basket today you need almost 90 lakh rupees
Correct.
to actually replicate that.
Mhm,
What index funds do is that because they pool all of this, they have a larger buying power. But the investor itself can buy in say 100 rupees, 1000 rupees, 5000 rupees, jo bhi hai. And
mhm,
at the end of the day get that market exposure that he's looking for without kind
Right.
of overextending himself or herself to kind of build that kind of portfolio.
Portfolio.
So this
Right.
is a
Right.
very critical point of index fund investing.
Mhm. Correct, correct. So I would have thought the same thing. This ability to invest so many companies. But एक चीज जो मुझे बहुत through this conversation which is really coming out is कि ठीक है, market linked returns मिलते हैं, right? अब large cap index में there is no selection related issues. Small cap में there are selection related issues. So from that perspective, I would personally say कि अगर small cap में exposure लेना है तो an index approach is better because the market return itself can over a period of time be substantial in nature. Would that be
Very true.
accurate?
Very true. Very true. So for example, typical knowledge base says that larger the universe, better the role for active managers till markets become efficient. Correct? Abhi,
Right.
market efficiency is a whole theory, so I won't get into that.
Mm-hmm.
But in India, active fund managers have done very well. Why? Because there are opportunities that typical indexing cannot participate in.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
But over the last 20-25 years, markets have become very, very efficient. So that is why passives have now taken on in such a way, because many large AMCs and large
Mm-hmm.
fund houses are finding it increasingly difficult to beat the benchmark. तो
Correct.
अगर
Mm-hmm.
तो अगर आप एक्टिव म्यूचुअल फंड्स की बात करेंगे तो
Mm-hmm.
what is the reason you pay for that higher alpha? What is
Mm-hmm.
that reason that you pay for, that extra money?
Extra.
It
Mm-hmm.
is to beat the benchmark. अगर वो
Mm-hmm.
it will not beat the benchmark, rather it will underperform the benchmark, then what is the point of doing that? So if you are going, so active and passive both have a story to play.
बिल्कुल.
And but you have to identify which, if your fund manager is good, rules based, has got a sound approach, and is able
Mm-hmm.
to consistently beat the benchmark, then active, by all means, please go ahead. But
Mm-hmm.
if there is an approach that provides you the same sort of return profile, that is market linked returns, it is very, very transparent, very rules based. So again, like all fund managers typically have rules, right? When they think of investing
बिल्कुल.
in stock X, stock Y, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Indexes also have rules. And if
Mm-hmm.
you are very, very keen to look at how the index rules are built, please go through, a scheme information document of any mutual fund passive product.
Mm-hmm.
It will outline, when there's a segment called about the index, it will outline the methodology of
Mm-hmm.
how a particular stock is selected. So it's a very,
Mm-hmm.
very, very rules based, very automated process of investing. And
Mm-hmm.
what it gives you is a very transparent portfolio. तो हर महीने आपको एक portfolio मिलेगा, आप देख सकते हो.
Mm-hmm.
अगर if
Mm-hmm.
you if you are one of those who tracks on a daily basis, तब भी आप देख सकते हो, because index आपके सामने है,
Correct.
right?
Right.
And by extension, you are able to get, because it's an index fund, so it will basically track, it will buy the
Mm-hmm.
same stocks, so you know what
Mm-hmm.
you are buying. And
Indeed.
accordingly, then you can buy your mutual fund or your index fund. And in small cap specifically,
Mm-hmm.
buying the entire index may often not make sense. So what we have done is we've
Mm-hmm.
taken a little call saying that within the small cap space, we will select the top 50 companies by liquidity and by various other parameters.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
so in essence, the investor himself doesn't need to do all this mehnat. We are taking care
Mm-hmm.
of all of it while building the index itself, so that you don't have to worry about jab market down jayega, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What will happen to my fund? We have taken care of all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So liquidity, so
Mm-hmm.
identifying the 50 largest companies, all of that is taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So that
So
is
this
how
is
we
very
can, we can
interesting.
solve small cap conundrum.
Perfect. No, actually, so I can clearly also see on my screen the kind of interest investors have in small cap stocks because we have a lot of questions coming our way.
Sure.
Most of the questions are very stock specific in nature, so
Okay.
I'm not sure whether you'll be able to
Yeah,
respond to that.
unfortunately, I can't address stock specific
So
queries.
उसके लिए बहुत क्षमा. I don't think we can respond to direct
Yeah.
stocks. But having said that, I think Shane will be able to at least help us with some interesting product recommendation. आपका नया fund launch होने वाला है in this
Mhm.
space. So maybe we can discuss that as an
Sure.
alternate to specific
Sure.
queries on small cap stocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would you like to just maybe walk us through your
Yeah,
fund
yeah,
offering?
sure. Sorry.
No problem.
So we've got the Axis Small Cap Fund, small Nifty. So it's called the Axis Nifty Small Cap 50 Index Fund. Quite a mouthful, I agree, but but basically what it tries to do is basically invest in the top 50 most liquid small cap names at any point in time. So this index is actually created by NSE Indices, the same people who brought you the Nifty 50, right? So
Mhm.
Nifty 50 coincidentally just completed 25 years, and kudos to that.
Okay.
So,
Mhm.
so basically, what they have done is they have done a lot of market research, and they have created a small cap universe,
Mhm.
basically by selecting out of the top 250 companies of small cap. They have selected 50 companies using the free float market capitalization, and they have ranked all of the companies by free float. And
Okay.
what they've also done is they have filtered out basis the average daily turnover. So जिसका turnover
Okay.
ज़्यादा है on a
Mhm.
6 monthly or a yearly basis, those people get preference. Those stocks get preference.
Mhm.
And there is also a criteria wherein newly listed companies can join this. So like we've
Okay.
seen a lot of newly listed companies, very high quality newly listed companies that have participated. And no, I'm
Mhm.
not talking about the ones that are in the news for all the wrong reasons. There are there are names that are inherently very very good, and they've completely been overlooked. So there are those
Mhm.
those companies that are entering some of these indexes, which is great
Mhm.
for us. And
Mhm.
what it basically tries to do is give investors a portfolio of a very bite-sized portfolio again of these
Mhm.
50 most liquid companies to track the small cap trajectory. Now,
Okay.
if you were to look at the performance of small caps,
Mhm.
in periods of growth, like I mentioned to you, small caps typically do much better because their
Right.
growth prospects are significantly higher, and the premium that is paid for growth is higher. So,
Higher.
just last year, for example, calendar year 2021, if the Nifty 50 gave you 26% return, this particular index gave you about 52% return. Now,
Wow.
it is not a sure shot thing that
Of
अगर
course.
निफ्टी X% देगा तो small cap 2x देगा. It is just by
Mhm.
coincidence last year this has happened.
Mhm. Mhm.
And typically in growth cycles, small cap stocks tend to do better. But you have to
Mhm.
identify the right stocks, right? Right,
Right.
right set of stocks. And that is what
Mhm.
we've tried to do with a basket of these particular most liquid stocks.
Okay. So,
The NFO
Shane,
actually opened,
I just
sorry,
wanted to. Sorry, no, go
yeah,
ahead. You go ahead with the
yeah,
details, and I'll ask you.
yeah. Sorry, the NFO is actually opening on Monday.
Mhm.
And is open till about the 7th of March. So with that, please, Deepika, go ahead.
No, so I will just reiterate that. So just for
Yeah.
all our listeners, viewers as well. So the NFO for the um, Access Nifty Small Cap Index Fund.
50 index.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
opened on the 20th of February and is on till the 7th of March.
Yeah.
तो अगर आप स्मॉल कैप में एक्सपोजर लेना चाह रहे हैं with some limited risk और not as much risk as maybe direct investing, तो आप ये investment consider कर सकते हैं. But
Thank you.
going back to what I was saying was
Thank you for that.
कि
Yeah.
so what I was saying actually was कि just to clarify a little bit, तो आप बोल रहे हैं कि this curated basket of 50 stocks is created by NSE. So
Correct.
at your front from Axis AMC, there is no selection. जो
No.
basket is made,
Yeah.
आप उसी basket में वही proportion में each stock में invest करेंगे.
Correct. That is the nature of index fund. So,
Index stocks.
access,
Right.
so access all access will do is execute the basket.
Okay.
The entire selection criteria is a rules based criteria, and I cannot stress this enough because rules
Mm-hmm.
are very very important as you go down the ladder of investing. So
Sure.
only if you have rules that are going to work both sides during good
Mm-hmm.
times and in bad, then those funds will typically deliver what you are expecting them to deliver.
Perfect. Indeed. I agree. Whether that is through an index fund or through anything, I think all
Yeah,
our many investors also who are in here will agree कि rule-based approach is important because it helps you reduce your losses and improve your returns or basically enhance your risk-adjusted returns over the longer term.
correct.
So absolutely agree with that. Great, Shane. I think we've covered a good enough amount of ground. And one thing I think we missed out on mentioning, and I think our viewers would definitely want to hear this, is about the costs involved in investing in a index fund which I
Right.
believe are usually lower than actively managed funds. But it is something that maybe we can just briefly touch upon.
Yes. So typically an actively managed fund would cost anywhere between 0.5% to say 1% on a direct plan. The regular plan will be
Correct.
meaningfully higher. I will not
Mhm,
get into that.
mhm,
Uh, an index fund basically the because it is devoid of the alpha generation capability, and
mhm,
like I mentioned to you, it's only the execution capabilities of Axis that will come to the fore. So
mhm,
those fund fees are meaningfully lower as well.
mhm,
I will not get into how much we are charging for the fund, but
mhm,
in essence, typically passively managed funds have expense ratios of anywhere between 10 basis points for large cap funds to anywhere between 25 to 30 basis points for small cap funds on the direct plan. Of course, on the regular plan, there would be some degree of brokerage commissions and all of that, which will be
mhm.
marginally incremental.
Sure. Take it, noted. I think that also cost is a very important aspect of everything that
Yes.
we buy and sell. So perfect, Shane. I think would you like to wind up? I know we have covered a lot of ground, but maybe just
Yeah,
quickly, just key takeaways for our
sure,
viewers.
sure. Sure. Small cap. So I will try my best in Hindi here. So that I
जी
meet a
हाँ,
larger
बहुत
audience.
सारे हमारे दर्शकों को रिक्वेस्ट आया है कि हिंदी में बात करिए
So
प्लीज. So
yes. तो बेसिकली इंडेक्स इंडेक्स फंड्स का जो पर्सपेक्टिव है, इट इज टू इट इज टू जो हम लोग निवेश करते हैं, इट इज टू क्रिएट अ बास्केट ऑफ सिक्योरिटीज विद द एब्सोल्यूट ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ गेटिंग रिटर्न्स इन
हम्म,
लाइन विद द मार्केट. तो अगर हम निफ्टी में निवेश करते हैं तो निफ्टी का जो रिटर्न प्रोफाइल है वो हम ट्रैक करते हैं.
correct.
सेम वे स्मॉल कैप में भी हम जो स्मॉल कैप 50 के जो स्टॉक्स अंडरलाइन स्टॉक्स है इन दैट पर्टिकुलर वेटेज, वो हम यूज करके वी वी इन्वेस्ट द एंटायर पोर्टफोलियो. एंड
हम्म,
ऑब्जेक्टिव इज नॉट टू क्रिएट अल्फा, इट इज टू क्रिएट मार्केट लिंक्ड रिटर्न.
ठीक है.
Okay. Index funds are gaining a lot of popularity, and within the small cap space it is important to have a rules based approach, because in the good times small caps, आप किसी भी small cap में अगर आप invest करोगे, you are able to deploy. But जब
हम्म,
times are bad, it becomes very difficult to exit or
correct.
profit book or any of these things. तो
हम्म,
रूल्स बेस्ड और लिक्विडिटी की जो रिक्वायरमेंट्स होती है इन अ हेल्दी मार्केट सिनारियो, वो नजरअंदाज रखते हुए वी हैव क्रिएटेड एन इंडेक्स प्रोडक्ट दैट इज क्यूरेटेड फॉर लिक्विडिटी मैनेजमेंट, एंड
perfect.
दैट इज व्हाट वी आर ऑफरिंग एज एक्सेस.
Superb. Superb.
Trust that.
बहुत बढ़िया. So that really covers everything, and I think I'll just have like एक चीज जो it's really stayed with me through this conversation is कि um, बेंचमार्क को हम लोग ट्राई करते हैं. We try to get returns greater than the benchmark, but I personally feel कि um, small cap benchmark itself can generate significant returns because of the very nature of small caps. तो उसको में भी बीट करने का जरूरत ही नहीं है. as long as you can get benchmark related returns in small cap, that is also a pretty good, like over the long term, अच्छा रिटर्न है आपके लिए. तो इट्स समथिंग यू कैन कंसिडर. एंड आई वुड
एंड एट द
ऑल्सो
पोर्टफोलियो
लाइक.
लेवल आपको कंसिस्टेंट रिटर्न्स चाहिए. आपको आपको एक साल में 100%, नेक्स्ट ईयर में
बिल्कुल.
-50%, वो दैट इज नॉट ग्रेट फॉर इन्वेस्टर एक्सपीरियंस. तो
इट्स
आप
डेफिनेटली
जब
नॉट
पोर्टफोलियो
ग्रेट.
बनाएंगे, प्लीज बिल्ड अ पोर्टफोलियो ऑफ स्टॉक्स और म्यूचुअल फंड्स और इंडेक्स फंड्स और एनीथिंग दैट यू आर कंफर्टेबल विद द इंटेंशन ऑफ गेटिंग कंसिस्टेंट रिटर्न. एंड तब भी आपका यू विल हैव कंसिस्टेंट वेल्थ क्रिएशन, तब भी आपको आपका इन्वेस्टर एक्सपीरियंस अच्छा रहेगा. And that is what we at Axis are trying to do. We are trying to build products that are going to give you consistent returns. We don't want you to have a very bad investor experience, hopefully. So
Perfect. So
with
I think
that
on
with
that
that said,
note,
happy investing. I think that's
that's a good note कि consistent investing करिए. Consistent returns and consistent experiences are good. So I'll just before I say my thank yous and bye, I would just like to also apologize to many of our viewers today who've really asked us a lot of questions about many specific stocks. Unfortunately, we've not been able to respond to that. But having said that, I hope आप जो हमने आपके साथ बात करी है स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स फंड्स के बारे में एंड द सॉल्यूशन व्हिच शेन हैज वेरी काइंडली शेयर्ड विद अस can add some meaningful value to your investment portfolio. So with that, Shane, I would like to thank you very much for this super great and different discussion. We've not had something like this on our platform previously. So thank you
My
very much for
pleasure.
that.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Lovely. And viewers, thank you for tuning in. I will see you next week. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.